Hey, I'm Jason Dorsey. I'm excited to share this watercolor lesson with this art class at Stanwood High School, from which I graduated in 1987. I grew up on Camino Island, on the south end of Camino Island. My friends and I joke about ourselves being gutter rats because I grew up very poor. My father was a professional artist and made his living from 1969 through 1979 as a full-time professional artist. My brother is a professional artist right now, and my dad is back after 15, 16 years of work at Boeing, is back at painting full-time. So I come from a family of artists, and actually right now I am the artistic director of Sunny Shore Studio on the south end of Camino Island, and am involved with art shows and publishing books and making movies, and so I really enjoy the creative life. But my full-time job, my real job, is as a Presbyterian pastor here in Redmond, Washington. So whether you go into art full-time or whether it is a pastime, as Winston Churchill called painting as a pastime, whether it's something you do to, make a living your vocation, or whether it's your avocation, it's something you enjoy doing. Painting is a great craft, great thing to have, to enjoy, to walk through your life with. I'm excited to share this watercolor lesson with you, but first let me show you my little studio that I've set up here in our apartment in Redmond, Washington. And I found a little cubby hole that works just perfectly for me, with a nice north light window. The north light is always good. It's the best window if you can find a north facing window. And you can see I've got my watercolor palette, watercolor paints. These are expensive. I've got my brushes. I'm gonna use this paper for a little demonstration today. It's pretty inexpensive. Okay, like I said, I'm gonna use this Canson watercolor paper. It's pretty inexpensive. I'm going to fasten it down to this board. You could fasten it to your desk with just some tape. And what this does is it just gives you a good secure surface. It's not going to be moving around. And because this paper is thin, it will also it can easily kind of bow and buckle a little bit. So this just keeps it more flat. So I like to do that. So we're gonna put this down. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to paint a scene that's very familiar to us who, live in the Stanwood Camino area, and that is a mountain scene with, the forest coming down to the water. And but I'm going to show you a little trick about composition. I learned this from my dad, and he said, draw very lightly. I'm going to have to do it dark enough so that you can see. So draw lines that divide the painting into thirds down this way, and then across into thirds. So I'll show you what I mean here. You can see those lines, right? And what he said was right here, right here, right here, right here, and right here is your golden mean. That's what he called it, your golden mean. In other words, when you are painting a painting, don't put your subject in the center. Put it in this area, in this area, in this area, or in this area. So today when we paint and sketch in our mountain, we're going to want to keep in mind this golden mean. We're also going to have a horizon line, and since we drew this line right here, we're just going to keep this as your horizon line. The horizon line is where the water and the sky meet. If you could look, imagine you're standing right here, you're looking at the scene. This is where the sky and the land would meet. If you could look as far out and see to the very end of how far your eyes could see, that's what we mean by the horizon line. So I'm going to sketch in this mountain, and you don't have to sketch a mountain exactly like it, but make your mountain interesting. Don't make it boring. Okay, so we have a mountain, and then we're going to draw behind it, we're going to draw some background hills. Okay, and then we're going to draw some hills that are closer and just kind of indicate that there's some trees here that are closer. Okay. And then down in this area, we're gonna just sketch out some little houses, I guess you could call them. And again, they don't have to look the same. I'm just kind of putting in very simple shapes, here. Okay, so what you have is you have your mountain, right? Okay, make this a little bit more interesting. Yeah, okay. Okay, we're drawing in the mountain a little bit, and I'm imagining some of those places where this, so we're just gonna, we're gonna draw this in. Okay. Now, in this scene, I want to indicate where the light is, where the sunlight's coming from, and so we're going to have this first scene is going to be a morning sunrise scene, and then I'm going to do two different paintings with different sky and just show you how you can make different scenes in terms of just even the choice of the colors that you use. But okay, so we have our main subject, the mountain. We've got a little bit of interest here with some houses. You've got a background hill here, all right? You've got your background hill, and then we're gonna just faintly draw in on this side the reflection. You're gonna, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but the main thing you're gonna reflect will be this first, group of first, I guess, landmass, and that's going to be the thing. But then you'll see a little bit of the reflection of the hill behind it. So you want to draw that in, and just think of a mirror. You just want that to mirror. And then up here again, we just want to mirror. Try to imagine just what it would look like with this mountain upside down, and do your best to sketch out the mountain, and with about the same distance as you have here between the trees and the mountain. But it doesn't have to be perfect. The reflection in the water won't be as clear as the reflection or as clear as the mountain itself, because after all, it is a reflection. Then we got this larger mountain shape here, and we've got, okay. And I've decided to make this watercolor with the mountains being capped, you know, in snow, and like I said, the sunlight coming in this way, so the sun is going to be hitting the mountain from this direction. And one of the things as I get started here, I want to just make a point about the brushes you use and the paint and so on. You can see that there's a lot of different colors here, but I'm going to just use 3 colors for this painting. I'm going to use my yellow, my cadmium yellow. I'm going to use a cadmium red, and I'm going to use a cobalt blue for my colors for the painting. So, all right, let's go. Now, one other thing with watercolor, you don't want to start with little brushes, and the bigger the brush. With a lot of my big paintings, I'll use a brush this large. Since this is a smaller painting, I'm going to use this brush. It is a Daniel Smith, and it's 16 is what it says there. You can see that's the size of the brush. But so we're going to start by taking clear water, and I'm going to put that clear water over the sky and outline the mountain. I want to avoid going into the mountain. Now, one thing to just note with watercolor is the approach to watercolor is that you start with your lightest colors, and you work from light to dark. So in this painting, we're going to start with our light colors and move to our darker colors. Okay, so right now I've just dropped in water in my sky. I've outlined the white peaks because I want to keep them white. My lightest light with this will actually be the white of the peaks. Then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to get this cadmium yellow, and I'm going to drop it in, starting where I want the brightest of the yellow to go, which is where the sun's coming up, right? Over here on this side. So I'm taking that yellow, and you can see it's pretty bright there. Okay. Just outlining, being careful with my brush to outline the mountain. And I'm letting this be a little bit, don't have as much paint in my brush by the time I get over here. So that's okay, because I don't want this to be as bright yellow. So I'm covering the whole of this sky with this yellow, and that's my first pass. Now, you can wait for this sky to dry and then apply a second color, but I'm going to put the color in now while it's wet, and that's called a wet in wet effect. When you put wet paint down on paint that's already wet, and that will bleed, the colors will bleed together. You can also let this dry, and when you let this dry, after it's absolutely dry, you can come back over it and put a second color and even a third or a fourth color on it, and that's called a glaze. That's called a glaze. So let's go in and get some of this red. Okay, so a little bit of a, and then I'm going to start with this red up at the top, so we've got, now I don't want my painting to be boring and just look completely the same. So in the sense of the sky having all the same sort of just straight across the red line. So I'm going to, over here on this side, I'm going to bring my red a little bit further down, right? But over here, I'm just, have some clouds going. Now, I'm going to drop in some of this cobalt blue. I mix it over here. Okay. All right. Let's drop in this, let's get a little bit more paint. Let's drop in this cobalt blue. Again, I'm going to start over here. By the way, I always have I keep this little towel here if I want to take out some of the strength of the color and lighten the color a little bit. Okay. And now I'm going to go here. I've got again, because the sun's coming up over here, I want the colors over here to be a little bit darker. Yeah. And you can decide, is this a sunset or a sunrise? It could be either. To me, it almost looks a little bit more like a sunrise or sunset. But okay, so now we have our color in the sky, and we are going to just sort of let that dry. Now, while it dries, and by the way, I wouldn't make my lines as dark, the lines that I drew as dark, but I did that so that you could see them. So you can always go back in and erase those once you've drawn them in. But I'm gonna keep them there so you can see the way that I designed the painting. So I'm gonna clean out my brush. I'm gonna go back over here to my palette. And I'm gonna go and get some of that yellow. And I'm gonna do the same thing now in the reflection. But remember, I'm going around the mountain. I'm gonna do the same thing, I'm just retracing my steps, same colors. One of the reasons that you don't want to just put a bunch of colors into your painting is because that can muddy up your painting. If you have a simple palette, if you have just 3 or 4 colors that you use, your painting will have a sense of consistency. All right, I'm gonna go back and get some of this red. Remember our red here. Okay, drop in some red up here. And using the side of my brush. You don't have to just use the point, you can use the side. I'm gonna go down here and put red in more of the sky down here because, yeah. And here you go. And then we'll come back in with a little bit of the blue. Now, I'm not too worried that it doesn't look exactly the same. It's not an exact mirror image because I'm not trying to create something that is so realistic that it's like a photograph. I'm trying to actually paint a painting, and with a painting, the artist can take a little bit of what we call artistic license, and you can make it work for you. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to let this dry. So we're going to have to come back later, and after this is dry, I'll catch up with you. So once you've laid in the sky, don't touch it, don't come back, just let it be, and we'll come back after this is completely dry. Okay, we're back. My paper's dry, which is good. I'm going to go back now and work on the mountains. Now with watercolor, remember I said we're going to work from light to dark in terms of our values. And because the mountains are covered with snow and I have the sun hitting them, are my lightest lights, my light values are going to be the white of the snow and where the sun's hitting the snow and not in shadow. So I'm going to take, and again, remember we're just using these 3 colors. We've got a little bit of the yellow, cadmium yellow, we've got the cobalt blue, and then we've got this red that we're using, cadmium red. And I'm gonna mix these 3 together to come up with a pretty gray. There's got a little bit of a purple in there. You've got a little bit of that yellow, but those 3 colors, basic colors, red, blue, and gray on in the color wheel. And I'm going to now just be imagining with the sunlight coming in from this side, coming this way, where the sun is hitting the mountain. I'm showing places where the sun is hitting, and then by leaving it white, and then creating the I'm showing actually building the shape of the mountain just by leaving negative space here. Not negative space. I guess what I'm saying is I'm showing by the shadows, where some of the different ridges and the different shaping of the mountain is. So I'm just beginning to imagine this, and you might want to sketch it in so you feel like you have a good picture of what you're trying to do. But for me, I think I'm painted mountains enough to know a little bit of what I'm trying to do with it. So I'm just going to, again, I'm painting this from my imagination, which is, sometimes you use photographs, sometimes you paint from imagination, but however you get your resource of what you're painting, you don't want to be so locked into. And by the way, I've got the sun's hitting the top of these mountains, but as you see, as we get further down, we're getting more into where the sun isn't hitting them. And so I'm showing that just by, it being more in the shadow. Okay. I love to see the Cascade Mountains in the morning with the sunrise. I grew up, like I said, on the south end of Camino. Okay, now, so I'm using the side of my brush. Now I'm going to go down into these where the tree line is going to be, and I'm using the same gray. I'm just covering down into the trees with that gray, because we're going to let that dry and then come back in over it. Okay. Now, I'm going around these houses for now. I'm just going to kind of go around them and just make sure I don't go into them. I got these little houses. Remember, we're come back and get to those. Okay. Now, let's do the same thing that we did before with the mirror image. And boy, it's hard to kind of visualize what side of the mountains would be, would have the shadow. But you remember, we're just doing a mirror effect. So it's just the opposite of what you have above. And like I said, it doesn't have to be It doesn't have to be perfect here. You're just trying to give the impression of, you know, what you, okay, we're gonna, same thing here. You've got some of the, we've got the, and then we're going to, again, avoid going into the houses, kind of go around it, leave them white. And I'll explain why later, but we've got the, and actually we should be going this way with this. I just realized the mirror effect would be going this way. But the great thing about watercolor is if you mess up, you can, it's not the end of the world. You can see a little, I'm doing a little bit of a recovery here because we got the angle. Okay, right here. Okay. Yep, just again, like I said, have to use our imaginations as we're not looking at a photograph or anything. We're just creating this this scene. Okay. And you know, the great thing about art is that we're not looking, art isn't about being perfect. It's about creating an impression, creating a mood, showing the beauty of the creation that we live in. You know, so it shouldn't be a terrifying thing. We shouldn't feel like really bad if we make a mistake or do something that we're not so happy with. Okay, I'm gonna come back in and put in a little bit more, darken up some of these rocks, maybe a little bit more of my red and yellows mixed in here, but not, I don't want it to be an orange, but I do want it to be a little bit darker as we put in some of the, we're going to come back into the mountain and drop in while the paint's wet. That's good. It's not a, I'm just dropping in little bits of color here to show where maybe some rocks are standing, you know. Okay, okay. So, but I'm not going to drop in those darker colors down into the water. I'm going to keep the water a little bit lighter. The reflection tends to be lighter. But while this is a little bit wet here, but it's okay. I'm going to go back in. Now I'm going to use my yellow and I'm going to use my blue and I'm going to create a light kind of, oh, I guess you could call it a light blue-green. And this is going to be used for the color of the background hills. And remember what I said, that we're working from light to dark. Well, these hills, as they're further away, they are lighter. We are lighter. As things are further in the distance, they're going to be lighter. So we're actually going to cover all the way down to where there is this reflection in the water. And actually, we're going to go down into the water here in just a little bit. Still avoiding these houses, and I'll explain why. Again, okay, I'm following the horizon line here so that I can have a little bit of a distinction from where the trees and the horizon line meet. So let's go back in and mix up some more of that green and maybe a little bit of, get some red in there. I'm mixing it here, and then we're going to go back into our And I'm going to, again, I'm just trying to mirror what I see above me. I'm not having to be perfect, but show. Okay, we got the trees, the background hill of trees. I'm going to be going around the houses there. And like I said, I'll explain why later, but I'm keeping the light there on the houses. And okay, so maybe go a little bit higher here. Okay, so you get the feeling. It's I'm not worried that it's not an exact mirror image, but I am trying to show the impression of, you know, you've got the mountains and then you've got the water and the horizon line. It's important to keep that horizon line flat. Okay. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get a smaller brush, and we are going to go back into our reds, maybe a little bit of blue here. Okay, so I'm going to begin to just sketch in the buildings and their shape, but I'm going to leave the roof white. So you've got that building. This is a little bit more detailed. I'm going to get some of that yellow, and I'm going to actually use the yellow, and I'm going to do a more of a yellow looking house. And again, you know, this is now I don't want all of the houses to be the same look, so I'm going to make this one long and just long like this. And then one more, and I think for this last one, I'm going to just go blue. Just go blue on this house. Okay, so you can see it's not very precise. I'm just putting in some basic colors. And I'm going to drop in, reflection, some blue reflection right there. Go back to my red, drop in a little bit of red reflection. I'm not worried about it. If you do feel like, oh, I didn't want it to go up that high, just come back in with your little towel that you have. There we go. Go back in and get a little bit of that brown, or I guess it's a brown color that we made. Okay. Pick up a little bit of that yellow that we used here. Okay. All right. So again, you can see, wow, it's not like anything that's perfect, but I want to leave the roof of those houses light, and you'll see why as I come back over. So, okay, so I had a little smudge over here, you can see. So I'll drop in some more green, and that's just the way it goes. There might be a little. Okay, so while this dries, this is drying up. Okay, so I'm gonna go back into my blues. I'm darkening. I'm making my colors darker. I'm getting some of this yellow here. Okay, yeah, you can see that color is definitely getting darker, getting stronger. And go back up to my reds. I really want this to be a a bold, darker green. Again, using reds, but I'm mixing my own green. And like I said, I didn't start with a green color. I started with blue, red, and yellow as my primary color. So let's go back over here, and so I don't want there to be rings here, so I'm gonna smudge a little bit of that out. Okay, so now we're going to drop in the darker green, and I'm going to, as I go around these houses here, see if I get this in a better position. I'm going to go around these houses. I'm going to stay off of the roof. I want the roof here to be visible, and I'm keeping it as a light, one of my light colors. Okay, so, all right, you can see. Now I'm gonna go up here. This is a little bit tricky. I'm gonna use a different brush. Go up here to my brushes. I'm gonna use a brush that's a little bit wider. Something like this or something like this. I like these for some of the trees. So I'm gonna go back in and get this dark green again. Come back to where I'm applying the paint. And I like to use the side, so I'm gonna paint with just the side of the brush. Like here. I want to keep some of that background hill because it really gives me a feeling of depth in my painting. You can see how with the brush, I'm kind of leaving some of the, now here, as we go along, you're gonna see that in some places, I bring the trees, the foreground trees, up over the trees that are in the back. And I want to do that because I want to show this depth here. Okay. So here we're going to go and then come down over here. Come down over here along the, remember we're following that horizon line. But there's a place here where I want to show again that hill in the distance. So I'm going to have my trees go down below it, and then here I'm going to bring them up above that until we come to the end of this little, what is it, the island or whatever, kind of ends right here. Okay, and remember we do our reflection, so we're going to go back in and just start working that reflection like this. It's a little bit tricky to do trees. What you want to avoid is, I think, at least I try, is trees that are going in an angle that, where it's not up and it's not really straight up and down. Most of the time trees are kind of straight up and down. So I'm trying to do that. And some along this line here, I don't want this line to be so distinct that they're it's okay to have it actually to fill it in places. I just want to suggest the horizon line. Okay. All right. We'll bring it up over here. Bring it up over here. Okay. All right. There we go. Now, you can see how with these houses, it's a little bit, to me, it's don't have a lot of, I don't have any shadow in here. And so I'm going to soften some of this, and I'm going to soften it by putting in some shadow in my houses. And that would include on the roofs, you know, and I'm going to drop in some shadow into the water. And the reason I'm doing that is just because I don't want, I just don't want it to be I want to soften it a little bit here. Make it a little bit more suggestive. Okay. All right. Well, that's a pretty simple painting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry, and just kind of, I guess, you know, sign your name. That's always a fun thing to do. When you're done with the painting, you just kind of sign your name down in the corner. So I'm going to sign my name, Jason Dorsey.